by putting IoT on these things, by sensors, you are able to indicate to the worker where he can find and doesn't have to search. So you gain a lot of lead time. And even if it's 1 or 2% on the lead time, given the production today, which are in the range of 60 aircraft per month, then it means that per year you're able to produce 1 or 2 aircraft more. So you
That's
can
a lot
imagine
of money.
that's the impact on the revenue is huge.
Welcome to Coffee with Mr. IoT, a weekly chat with Robert Schmidt, Deloitte's chief futurist, and the builders, dreamers, founders, and wild children of the IoT universe. This podcast can also be viewed on the Coffee with Mr. IoT YouTube channel.
Hello and welcome to another Coffee with Mr. IoT. My name is Robert Schmidt, Deloitte's chief futurist, also known as Mr. IoT. Today on my show, Jean-Louis Rassineaux is my guest. You are a partner in the
Thanks.
French practice, and you have a variety of interesting responsibilities. Can you tell us about it?
Sure, thanks a lot for hosting me first.
Oh, it's great to have you.
That's really nice. I'm responsible for aerospace and defense and also for industrial products and construction. So we are trying to reinforce that sector initiative by really making sure that all accounts are treated with the full range of jobs that we have within Deloitte and treating them totally internationally. So working with Germany, of course, as part of Deloitte Central Europe, working with UK, with Spain, with Finland, with the United States, with Canada, with India so far. So really making it international because I think that's the way to win at an international client.
You're also the lead consulting partner for Airbus,
Yes.
I understand. I'm curious, does that mean you actually have to choose the flights you take? You can't fly on Boeing?
I prefer not to fly on Boeing, but now it's more, for 20 years that I've been traveling back and forth between Toulouse and Paris, or sometimes between Paris and Munich for Airbus Defence and Space. I love it, My favorite client for the products, being inside the product is so cool, and I'm always getting excited by, the new things that they're bringing up, the innovation. It's my favorite client. I shouldn't say that, but they are,
Well, they make amazing planes. I'm actually curious, in your role, have you been able to sit in the front of the plane, do some really fun stuff inside an Airbus?
I was involved really for A380 in the development of the A380. We were involved in developing the new PLM for A380, so we were part of the cabin design, and we had the chance to fly among the first guys within an A380. We loved it.
The first to fly in the cabin of an AC380, huh?
Yeah, that was great time. I mean, it's really, you feel part of the adventure. And also when you are on the tarmac and seeing the flight of the first plane, may it be A380 or A350 or the A320neo, that's always a fantastic experience. I mean, you are like the other guys and, vibrating because you feel, wow, that's a cool thing to happen.
If I think of product lifecycle management, PLM for an aircraft, that's gotta be at a scale that's really, you don't have that often.
Yeah, the degree, I worked like 10 years on PLM at Airbus, and the degree of complexity is extremely high. There is no plane which is similar to another one. Each MSN, as they call, a master serial number, is different. Each plane is different from each other. So you need to track the exact configuration to the part of each plane for certification purposes and of course for maintenance and operation purposes. I think that's the most difficult product, apart maybe from submarines. There is a fight between the submarine guys.
Submarines versus airplanes, that's the comparison.
Yeah, they always say, the submarine guys, they always say that's so much more complex than an airplane because you've got also limited size. But that's more an expert discussion. But both of them are extremely complex.
I gotta say, I want to see a submarine engineer and an airplane engineer sit here with me and talk. That must be really funny to have them compete for complexity. It's very interesting.
But they get the same challenges, The challenge is always the same, is how do you get track of every part? And also how do you reduce the lead time of producing this aircraft by trying to standardize? Although each aircraft is different, how do you keep like a core of the aircraft and build on top of that variance and be really efficient in doing that.
So let's talk a little bit about airplanes and the Internet of Things. How has connectivity changed the production as well as the maintenance and the running of airplanes in your mind?
Yeah.
What are we seeing? What are you seeing? And actually, then
Yeah.
where do we go in the future?
To make it simple, you can look at an aircraft as being another computer producing data, but gigabytes, terabytes of data. And all this data has to be used somewhere, can be used somewhere for smart purposes. So it can be used for preventive maintenance, of course, that's one of the usual cases, where you have already, from the flight of the aircraft, you identify from the signals what part needs to be maintained, and you have the people on the ground already ready to operate. So you may really see the aircraft as sending tons of data. In addition to that, you may correlate this data to the data sent by all the airlines and also by the suppliers. And then you create an ecosystem, suppliers, airlines, and aircraft manufacturers, where you can use this data and really, in a smart way, to improve the production lead time, to improve the development lead time, to improve the maintenance operations lead time. So many things can be done from that. Now, where IoT plays an important role is not only on the production of the part itself, but more on the process. As we can see it on the Deloitte stand, you really have the means to monitor the processes in a much better way. It may be for tracking, for instance, the parts. As we were mentioning, each aircraft is different, so you need to identify which parts belong together. So when you are in a shop floor with all the different parts, getting IoT and sensors on the parts may allow that you find much quicker which parts have to go together, and then you reduce your lead time. Another example is for the drilling or the rivet machines, that they have a tendency to be a little bit everywhere on the shop floor, because you have a worker moving with his machine and not putting it at the right place. By putting IoT on these things, by sensors, you are able to indicate to the worker where he can find and doesn't have to search. So you gain a lot of lead time. And even if it's 1 or 2% on the lead time, given the production today, which are in the range of 60 aircraft per month, then it means that per year you're able to produce 1 or 2 aircraft more. So you
That's
can
a lot of
imagine
money.
that's the impact on the revenue is huge.
So that's all about location services, finding parts, putting the right part together, knowing what parts are.
Absolutely.
This actually goes further, right? I've worked with an airline, and for them, it's actually finding the spare parts in there, knowing where their spare parts are, because they are all labeled too.
Absolutely.
They all need to be aged, they all need to be kept up, and so forth. So this is a lifelong
Exactly.
management, not just the production, all the way until they.
Exactly. No, it's not just the production. It starts really from the design part until the MRO. And in the MRO, it's very important to know exactly what part needs to be changed. And eventually you can print it in 3D before the plane lands and replace the part if it's a mechanical part. So many applications to IoT using all the sensors and information produced by the aircraft while in flight, while in operations, basically.
So I have to ask you about, when you look at it from the outside, there is a variety of aircraft manufacturers, but between the big two, there's a big competition going on, and all we see is who bought which airline, which aircraft, and how many, and so forth. But if you look at it more from the production side, where do you see differences in how they operate, how they produce? Sort of like, where do they
Well, in
show
Europe,
different advantages?
at least in Europe, you need to play also a smart industrial distribution, which means that you have different states participating to the design and build of the aircraft, and you need to cope with that constraint of having each country. In Spain, they do part of the mostly the tail part of the aircraft. The wings are made in the UK. The fuselage is made part in Germany, part in France. So there is an industrial distribution that needs to operate. I think in the States it's maybe a bit easier because you stay
So that's
within
easier
the
because
States.
you don't have to.
Although, for certain planes like the Dreamliner, it's produced also in Japan. So you also find the same constraints of getting things moving together. But it's true that when you look at what we have in Europe, it's a good way of integrating the way of working, which is bringing constraints, but very rewarding because when at the end of the day you observe that very different cultures and people manage to work together and bring an aircraft together, that's a fantastic industrial success.
Have we as Deloitte and has Airbus as a company planned forward what Brexit will mean for them?
Yeah, of course. We are working with them, leveraging tax and legal people. So we have in discussion mostly with them. That does have a lot of implications, and we are working with them to help and assess what can be done.
But at this point in time, it's not clear yet what they all are. So it's much more scenario planning, is it?
Yeah, exactly. Because you don't know. Yeah, wow. Changes every day. So you need to really, keep track of what they are doing. But yeah, we're trying to help them in scenario planning, evaluating what are the consequences. And the consequences on the industrial part are quite big.
So let me switch from production. I'm also really interested about, you said it's a flying computer, right? It generates so much data. I was thinking of the operating part of the data. One of the things that fascinates me is how, from what I can see, there continues to be this conversation, who owns the data?
Yeah.
When in reality, both sides need to know the data, and it's almost like, how can they work together? Where are we on this? What's your take on it?
Well, we just had a panel, where this question was at the heart of the discussion between the airlines, the OEMs, the manufacturers, and the airport also, and the authority. Who owns the data? Well, it doesn't matter that much. That was the outcome of the discussion, as long as you're willing to share this data. And that the use cases for this data is clear and agreed by everybody, leveraging so that you can get the best leverage out of the data which is being produced in whatever silo. What is important is to break the silo because that's where you generate the value.
And is that happening today? Are people breaking the silo?
It's still a bit, starting, we'd say. It's
starting.
Yeah, it's starting. An initiative that I mentioned of Skywise, which is breaking the silos and by having the airlines and the OEM and certain suppliers work together. That works, that starts working, but we can go even much further. And that will go much further down the road.
I sat here and I had a conversation with Teppo about the city that he's the executive director for innovation. Okay. And one of the things he talked about was the city being sort of the hub, if you wish, of the data coming together. Is that something you see happening in the airline industry too, where governments and central agencies can facilitate that, become sort of a neutral place?
I think that's one of the wish. Now, again, you have a particular situation in the States where you're much more harmonized. In Europe, imagine, how much harmonization is needed just between the air traffic management systems. So we have this initiative called CESAR, the equivalent of Next Gen that you have in the US. But in Europe, you need to harmonize, many countries together, which adds up to the complexity. So that's really what we are trying to achieve first.
That's awesome. If you look at that part, the data part, and the planes flying and operating, if you look a year out, if you look 5 years out, where do you see us go with this in terms of technology and what we have and so forth?
Well, in 2024, we announced in Paris, for the Olympic Games, there is a deal going on between the Metro of Paris, RATP, Airbus, and there is some players, sorry, I will find, but they decided to build the first unmanned autonomous vehicle, the flying taxis, the eVTOLs,
Okay.
electrical vertical takeoff and landing things. So that's going to be quite interesting because, we open a totally new area for the aerospace industry where we will move from, bringing today's hundreds of people together from one point A to one point B to almost autonomous vehicle for one person. And that's extremely interesting. I mean, it's going to open plenty of opportunities and plenty of innovation. And I mean, it's an exciting, this industry is only 100 years old. That's nothing. That's nothing. So can you imagine what will happen in the future in 100 years from now? Starting from the Wright brothers, with their, things. And today we have this A350. So can you imagine in 100 years? It will be absolutely amazing. Like The Fifth Element, everybody's talking of this movie, The Fifth Element from Luc Besson, with all the flying taxis everywhere. Is that going to be the future? Maybe, and sooner than we might think of.
I think we have this already in mobility on the ground, which is a question of who's going to actually operate this. And it'll be the same question, who's going to operate this in the air, right?
Yeah.
Is it going to be the airline manufacturers? Is it going to be the airlines?
Well, there is one complexity extra. Is on the ground, you push the stop button, it's okay.
It's okay, that's right.
In the air, it's not the same effect.
That name gravity gets in the way.
Yeah. But coming back to your question, that's, who is going to operate? Is it like companies like Uber going to operate this? Is it going to be operated by the airline? It's a key question. And there is no one answer. The business operating model may be different, and I think each one will be interesting. We'll see a lot of changes also in that.
So I want to move to the last part of that journey, if you think about it, right? You built the plane, then you travel on the plane, and eventually you land the plane somewhere. Well, it has to take off too, but let's just assume it's the end of it, the airports. One of the things I saw which really fascinated me was in the US, at almost all airports as I know of, is there's still someone standing there guiding the planes in, and that actually limits when they can land and when they can park, and it causes delays and so forth. And I know now at Heathrow, they've automated some of that. Yeah. Is this sort of like what you see in Europe in general when you look at airports, when you look at airport operation? Is there a lot of progress being made, and what developments are you seeing in that space?
I would say it depends from airport to airport. I think what is key now, what airports are putting together is the travel experience. That's number one. Then it's true that making the link with the easiness of parking, which make the disembarking process quicker, is something I don't see much. You mentioned Heathrow, but that's still one step forward to be made. So there are still many things, I guess, in that area to be developed. But we're just also at the start. Today I see a lot more about, people feeling better in the airport, like home. And another travel experience, we had some gentlemen from Belgium saying that could be, one way, like a city. The airport becomes like a city where you can make business, hotels, whatever. Well, we'll see that evolving a lot, I guess. So the travel experience will change, and it will be probably also something we don't even expect today.
I want to switch topics. I want to talk a little bit about Deloitte with you. Tell us a little bit about Deloitte, how long you've been with us. I believe you've been a long time.
I was 30 years at another company before,
leading
Aerospace and Defense, starting with an A, and joined Deloitte 1 year and a half ago. And I'm super happy. This company, Deloitte, is very human.
What have you found here that's really impressed you? Because you have a unique perspective.
The human side. The human side is what I like the most, is that I feel people help each other at Deloitte. I think there is a very goodwill and good atmosphere, positive atmosphere that I didn't have before, So that's really what I like about it. It's the partners model is something we should definitely keep. Because that's, fosters.
So people, what do you mean by that? People who aren't in a partnership, what are the characters that really make it good for you and I?
When you're quoted at the stock exchange, from day one you understand that you're not playing anymore the same game. Because you've got the result of the stock market every day, So we have the chance to, at Deloitte, I think, to worry, of course, short term, but also we can think long term and not just be focused on the quarter. So we have a unique chance of this partnership. And for me, that's the biggest richness, the biggest wealth we've got. So it's very, very good.
So what do you think about, one of the main reasons people go to the stock exchange is for capital, right? How do I get capital for innovation? And I believe we innovate quite well in Deloitte, but give me your view on how do we innovate in Deloitte and how do we go about that, because we don't have the same access to liquidity the same way.
Yeah, but I heard that story, about going to the stock market for liquidity. Is it a true argument? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe also,
You're limited.
Yeah, I would say, that the longer we can keep that model of investing by ourselves with our own fund, I think the better we will be. Because we are not dependent on anyone, and we can have a smart, balanced policy between our employee satisfaction and happiness in working and pride to work for Deloitte versus making our stakeholders happy, which is not the same thing.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I want to close with a question about technology at your home. What's your home like? How smart is your home? How automated? I always find it fascinating for people who work so much in tech like you and I, what technology we have at home.
Not much, I'm fighting with my daughters to fix the printer all the time. And
They fix it or you fix it?
I have to fix it, So I try to limit the technology side, just to be Mr. Technology and fix the things for my daughters.
Okay, so printers,
Wi-Fi, things like that. So I try to limit and be more, technology at work, but at home more family life and more exchange rather than, texting during lunch or dinner, forbidden and things like that.
Screen-free time.
Exactly, enjoying more relationships than technology.
How many kids do you have?
I have 2 daughters.
Oh, very nice. I have 2 boys. Mine are 20 and 22. So
same, 21 and 18.
Okay,
Same.
close.
Cool.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you for joining me.
Same.
Anything I
Great
missed
pleasure.
that you want to talk about?
No, that was just really nice talking with you. Enjoyed, and thanks for inviting me again.
Thanks for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Coffee with Mr. IoT. To subscribe or to listen to more episodes, search for Coffee with Mr. IoT in your favorite podcatcher, or find us online at deloitte.com/US/coffee with Mr. IoT. To watch the video version of our show, go to YouTube and search Coffee with Mr. IoT.